as what we see and hear.
Absolutely. What are you working on next, if anything?
Well, I am, and unfortunately, I am sworn to secrecy.
That's fine.
Only because they haven't announced it yet, and they haven't announced the people involved in it yet.
Okay.
So I'm already doing it. We've been working. We've been here in my studio working. Everybody's been here. It's been fantastic. But unfortunately, I can't talk about it. But
no worries.
It's fun. It's really cool. It's a big project, and I can just tell you that I'm not doing the score, so it's not a score, but it's really exciting. And then we're about to start a series for Disney Plus of Moana. Okay. I think it's a 4-part series going on with her life into where she takes off at, I think, 18 or so, and it's really good. Okay. So those things are going on. There's other things coming, but they're we're gonna wait. They're making a new Twister movie.
I was gonna ask you. I read about the Twister sequel. Are you in any way remotely involved with it? Or you don't know?
Don't know. I mean, nobody's. I mean, the head of music at Fox, I've talked to, and he'd love me to do it. But there isn't any talk of me doing it. So, right. Who knows what's in their mind,
Yeah, it's a shame that Bill passed.
I should do it, I mean, I don't know whether I even want to, but I should do it,
I think you should. Not that my opinion matters, but I think you should.
I mean, obviously it would be updated and it would be a different kind of a thing, but who knows? These things are politics and you never know how things are going to land.
Yeah. And
I don't need more work. Let me put it that way.
No, it's not about, it's not about more work in terms of, necessity of living, which is great and everything, but just the idea of doing what you are born to do and what you're meant to do and what you love doing, because that puts you in a happy place. And that's the most important thing about anything else.
Well, those are movies, like for instance, if they redid Speed as a new version of it, it would be really weird if they didn't use my themes in it. For me, it would just seem like it's not Speed. It would seem like it's a whatever,
Yeah.
But if they did use my themes, even if I didn't do it, but if somebody else used those themes in a different way, it would really feel like a Speed thing. I'm kind of surprised they haven't done it because, I mean, it is a classic. But, they could update it and do it probably pretty cool.
I think my guess would be because Speed 2 happened, and Speed 2 didn't do well box office, which I actually saw it, right? Because even though I heard so much terrible things about it, it wasn't that terrible, but it wasn't obviously as great as the first one.
The frustrating thing for me was that after Speed and after Twister, I would say to Jan, how come we're not doing a Speed 2? Mm-hmm. And he would say, I just can't find the right script. I can't find the right subject, And I was like, okay, And then he called me and said, we've got it. We've got the subject. It's going to be unbelievable. We're going to write a symphony. And I was all excited. And I went to his studio and I saw that it was a ship. And I mean, honestly, I didn't know what to do because there's no way I could say, no, I'm not doing it. Because he gave me a break. But all I could think of is, how am I going to make this good? I mean, it's a ship, It's going so slow, nobody cares. And you don't have Keanu Reeves. So it was a very painful movie for me, and I know for Jan, too. It was a really painful movie because it just got out of control. It cost a fortune. It wasn't good. And I tried everything I could to make it good, but I just couldn't. I couldn't.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. And in terms of, I'll take another 5-10 minutes of your time, and then I'll let you get back to your work. Future composers, right? Like, the way the 90s became, in my view, the era of new composers, and, I think we're in that same time frame now. Maybe we're past that couple of years. What advice do you have for people who are trying to get into scores or trying to do film soundtracks?
Well, one thing I learned from Alan Silvestri is to always keep in mind that you're in a service industry when you're a film composer. If you're a composer, you're not in a service industry. But if you're a film composer, you're in a service industry, which means you're there to serve the people hiring you. You're not there to serve yourself. If you can do both, great. But at the end of the day, it's not your movie, it's the director's movie. So, you really need to listen to them, and you really need to be flexible. And that doesn't mean that you want to give up on your ideas and be pushed around, but at the same time, it's not your movie. And you have to keep that in mind, because it's very easy when you write something to feel like you own it, and you own now part of the movie. But it's, my themes to Speed are my themes, but it's Jan's movie. Jan made that movie, and they could have hired another composer, and I think the movie still would have done really well. I think I really helped, but I didn't make the movie he did. So you have to always keep that in mind, I think. And it's hard because when you write music, you become very close to it. But you have to keep that in mind. And you have to be very patient. And you got to keep your mouth shut. I think that's another thing. When you're coming up, not when you're at my point, I think keeping my mouth shut is not a good idea. But when you're coming up, keep your mouth shut. Because I didn't. I would speak, and I put my foot in my mouth sometimes and said things that, just shut up. You're coming up. You're not there yet. Don't, get cocky,
Yeah. I agree with that, but I would like to ask you one thing on that comment, and this is just a question. I find this is not just in music or film. I personally find that if you, and when I say speak up, I don't mean speak up in a rude way, right? Like if as a creative person or as a human being, if you don't voice your opinion, whatever that is, right? Yeah, you're obviously deep down, it's bothering you that you're not letting it out. That's beside the point. I find that when you let your truth comes out, there's always people in the room or in the vicinity that maybe 1 out of 20 would appreciate that the guy or the girl had the spine, to say something that they wanted to say. Do you think that is similar to what you're saying, or that's completely different?
Here's the difficulty. So, let's just say you gave me a scene, and I wrote music for it.
Sure.
And then I played it for you. Okay? What I'm giving you is exactly what I think should be there. I've thought about it. I've thought about every frame, and I've thought, this is what I think should be there. So if you say to me, well, I think it should be something else, and then you say to me, but what do you think? I already showed you what I think. Yeah. So I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to sit there and go, no, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's better for me to take in what you're saying and go, well, let me think what you said. Let me go back and let me see if something happens. Like maybe one of the things you said will stick with me, or maybe I'll come back to you and say, you know what, I just think you're wrong. But to say something right off the bat, I would just say, no, this is what I think. I just would repeat myself, right? Which you don't want to hear that, because that's not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So again, I've learned that either take what the director's saying and take it in and take it back to your studio and see if you can formulate a revision that, does that, or take it back and think about it. But if I immediately react, I'm going to immediately probably negatively react, just because I've put so much work into it that I'm trying to save it,
Yeah, you're right.
And I might be wrong. I could be totally wrong. Maybe you're right. But, I'm just, my tendency is to save my baby.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head when you just said that, because when you react in any kind of conversation in that very moment, 99.9% of the time, you're reacting based on your own emotions and your ego and how it's bothering you.
Absolutely.
But if you cool down and you just settle yourself away for even 20 minutes and rethink it, like, the way that you told me that example of Jan coming to you.
Yes.
And you kind of said that no, and then he went away like, oh yeah, that you had that opinion. So maybe, yeah, you're right.
I learned a lot from that. time. And I have to say, there's a wonderful documentary. Well, no, it's an interview. Rick Beato and Thomas Newman. And for you, I think you would really enjoy it because he really asks questions of Tom that you would want to know. He doesn't just ask, how big is your orchestra? He doesn't ask those kind of questions. He asks these kind of questions, more mental, and Tom has a great attitude about when somebody gives him an opinion, because he questions everything. So he questions that opinion, but he also questions his own music, right? And thinks about it in terms of, well, yes, it absolutely could be what you're saying. It absolutely could be. Or it could be this, or it could be some in between, which is a great way of doing it, because you're welcoming criticism, but you're not saying, oh yeah, you're totally right, I'm completely wrong. You're not saying that either.
Yeah.
Collaborative. It's very collaborative. And yet he's kind of combative. You have to watch it because it's interesting how he balances that. He stays with his guns, but he also collaborates. It's interesting. I found it really fascinating.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because filmmaking itself, trying to figure out what the audience want or what would click, is all about human psychology. Trying to understand that, and then at the same time, what you just said, collaborating with people in such a way, and that's an art. That really is an art, where you get your point across firmly, but respectfully. And that is not an easy task to do.
No, it's not. Especially as you say with the emotion, And if you stayed up till 2 a.m. working on this thing, then you're really kind of crusty, and you're just not you're not patient enough to just really kind of take it in, and And I've noticed that with filmmakers too. I know days when they come in when they're just exhausted, and it's like, it's a music meeting, but man, got so much in my head right now with cutting and all the stuff you got to do as a director. It's a process. It's a tough process.
Yeah. Do you listen to any international composers? Just not in terms of soundtracks, but just music singers, or just to get a different vibe and a feel of the culture?
I do a lot, and but the way things are now, you flip around YouTube. I just flip around YouTube every night, and I read. I love to read, and I love to I go from. There's a new pianist. No, she's not new. There's a European pianist. She's Romanian. I've just fallen in love with this girl. Her playing is so magnificent, and I don't know her. But I reached out to her, and she knew who I was.